When did you realize that pretending to be stupid or disabled could save your life or someone else's? I always thought I was the type of kid who would run or scream if something bad ever happened. You know, the kind of kid who would kick and fight if someone tried to take me. Turns out, I was wrong. Sometimes, the only way to stay alive is to pretend you're too stupid to be worth killing. I was 14. My parents and I were on a road trip to visit my grandma in Arizona, and we stopped at this rundown roadside diner because Dad was starving, and Mom didn't want to listen to him complain the rest of the drive. I remember the cracked vinyl booths, the buzz of a neon open sign, and the smell of burnt coffee and fryer grease. I had to pee, so I slipped away while Mom was checking her phone, and Dad was studying the menu like it was a work contract. The men's bathroom was tiny, with a single stall, a busted soap dispenser, and a flickering light that made everything feel like a horror movie. I had just finished washing my hands when I heard the door creak open, and two men stepped inside. They didn't see me right away because I was tucked near the hand dryer, drying my hands. I froze. They were dressed like regular dudes. Plaid shirts, jeans, one of them had a trucker hat, but their voices, low, urgent, made the air in the bathroom feel tight. You sure this is the place? Yeah, it's perfect. Parents distracted. Kids everywhere. Remember, we're only looking for the slow ones, the ones that don't fight back. I stopped breathing. The shorter man spat in the sink and said, "Less trouble, easier to handle. Nobody asks too many questions." And that's when I felt it. This cold, sharp realization running down my spine. They were here to take someone, a kid who wouldn't fight or scream, a kid who wouldn't be able to tell anyone what happened, a disabled kid. My heart was pounding so loud I was terrified they would hear it. I pressed myself against the wall, trying to shrink into the peeling paint. They were standing by the door now, and the taller one muttered, "Let's scope out the tables. We can distract the parents, grab the kid, be gone in 60 seconds. They left, the door swinging shut behind them with a squeak that felt like it echoed forever. I stood there, staring at the dirty floor, my pulse hammering in my ears, the smell of the soap and the stale air making me dizzy. I knew I had two choices, run to my parents and tell them. But what if the men saw me? What if they were armed? What if they grabbed another kid? Or, I don't know why the second idea came to me, but it did. If they were looking for a kid who wouldn't fight back, a kid who was slow, then maybe I could be that kid. Maybe if they took me, I could figure out where they were taking kids. I could find a way to tell the police, to help other kids they took. I was shaking so hard I almost puked in the sink. But there was something else in me too. Something hard. Something angry. I splashed cold water on my face, looked at myself in the cracked mirror. Skinny, freckled brown hair sticking up, eyes wide. And I told myself, if you want to survive, you have to pretend to be stupid. So I stepped out of that bathroom, back into the diner, and I let my eyes go unfocused. I let my mouth hang open a little. I started to shuffle my feet and look at the ceiling. I saw the two men sitting at the counter watching the tables. One of them turned his head and saw me, and I saw it in his eyes. I had just become exactly what they were looking for. I shuffled back to our table, letting my feet drag on the cracked linoleum floor. Dad was talking to Mom about the route to Grandma's, arguing over which highway was faster. I dropped into the booth next to Mom, letting my head loll to the side, staring at the ketchup bottle like it was the most fascinating thing in the world. Mom glanced at me, eyebrows pinched. "You okay, honey?" I let my mouth fall open a little, blinked slowly and nodded, but didn't say anything. Dad snorted. "He's probably just tired." Mom reached over and touched my forehead. "You feel warm." I wanted to scream, "Please, just take me and leave now," but I couldn't. If I said anything, they'd know something was wrong. If I acted normal, they might take someone else's kid. I had to keep pretending. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the two men watching from the counter. One of them nudged the other, and they both turned to look at me. I felt like a rabbit under a hawk's shadow. While Dad argued with the waitress about the special he didn't want, I kept up my act. I let my head droop forward, stared at my hands, let a bit of drool slip from my lip, then wiped it on my sleeve. I mumbled under my breath, "Nonsense sounds." I watched them watching me. The taller one pulled out his phone, typing something, then looked back at me. His eyes flicked to the door, then back to me. I knew it. I knew they had chosen me. When the food came, I picked at the fries, squishing one in my fingers and smearing ketchup across the plate, making messy lines. I let my eyes unfocus, blinking slowly, forcing myself not to react when Mom sighed and said, "Maybe he's getting sick." Dad rolled his eyes. "He's fine. Let him be." They didn't know that every second felt like a countdown. After a few minutes, the two men got up and walked past our table. The shorter one glanced down at me, then looked at Dad. "Cute kid," he said with a fake smile. Dad nodded, distracted, looking at the check. Yeah, the men walked out, and I felt my stomach clench. They were waiting. I was shaking so badly under the table that I had to clench my fists until my nails dug into my palms to stop. Mom was busy digging in her purse for her wallet. Dad was complaining about the tip. I forced myself to keep drooling, to let my head droop to the side, to let my eyes unfocus. Inside, I was screaming. Every second felt like glass scraping down my spine. When we finally walked out of the diner, the sun was bright, making me squint. The parking lot was half empty, and I saw their van, a beat-up white one with a dent on the side and no windows in the back. The two men were leaning against it, smoking. They saw me. One of them dropped his cigarette and stepped on it, eyes flicking toward me, then to Dad, then back to me. Dad was digging for the car keys, complaining about how he just had them. Mom was telling him to check his other pocket, and that was the moment. I felt the taller man step up behind me, and a hand clamped down on my shoulder. "Hey buddy, your dad dropped this." he said, holding out a keychain I knew wasn't ours. I turned slowly, letting my eyes unfocus, letting my mouth hang open. Dad? I slurred, dragging out the word. Dad turned around, annoyed, but before he could react, the man was already guiding me toward the van. It's okay, buddy, we'll help you. I didn't fight. I let my body go slack. I saw Dad patting his pockets, turning around, his mouth opening as he realized I wasn't next to him. The van door slid open and I was lifted inside, the smell of cigarettes and old fast food hitting me in the face. The last thing I saw before the door slammed shut was my dad's face, twisting in shock and horror, his mouth forming my name, and then it was dark. I was gone. But I kept my eyes unfocused, my mouth open, drooling, letting them think they had the perfect target. Inside, I was memorizing everything. The smell, the scratches on the inside of the van door, the tattoos on the man's wrist, the direction we were driving. Because if I was going to survive and save anyone else they had, I had to keep pretending I was stupid. The inside of the van smelled like cigarettes, sweat, and something sweet and rotting, like old fruit. They didn't blindfold me. They didn't even bother. The taller man sat in the passenger seat, glancing back at me every so often while the shorter one drove, humming along to a country song on the radio. I let my head rest against the window, drool slipping from the corner of my mouth, my eyes half open. Every time the taller man looked at me, he seemed satisfied, like he was looking at a sack of groceries instead of a person. Inside, I was burning. Every street sign, every turn, every landmark, I repeated in my head over and over like a chant. Shell station, left at the blue sign, over the train tracks, past the broken billboard. We drove for what felt like hours, but it was probably only 30 minutes into the industrial part of town, where everything was warehouses and cracked concrete and weeds pushing through the edges of chain-link fences. The van pulled into a gravel lot behind a warehouse with boarded-up windows. The taller man came around and slid open the van door. "Come on, buddy," he said, fake friendly. I let my legs slide off the seat, dropping to the ground like I couldn't control them, and he grabbed my arm, yanking me to my feet. He smelled like sweat and cheap cologne. They led me through a rusted metal door, down a hallway that smelled like mold and old oil, and into a room with a single hanging bulb that flickered every few seconds. There were 4 other kids in there. 2 boys around my age, 1 little girl who looked about 8 with tangled blonde hair, and another girl who might have been 12, rocking back and forth, clutching a dirty stuffed rabbit. I let my eyes scan the room without moving my head. There were mattresses on the floor, a bucket in the corner that smelled like piss, and a small window covered with metal bars. The door slammed shut behind me with a loud clang, and the lock turned. For a moment, the room was silent, except for the 12-year-old girl's soft rocking. Then the older of the 2 boys, who had shaggy black hair and bruises on his arms, looked at me and said, "You knew?" I let my mouth open, blinking slowly, and mumbled, "Hi." He frowned, looking away. Great, another one. The 8-year-old girl started to cry softly, hugging her knees. I moved to an empty mattress and sat, letting my arms flop, letting my head droop. But inside, I was watching the small camera in the corner of the ceiling, watching the heavy chain on the inside of the door, watching how the older boy was picking at a loose thread on his mattress like he was trying to distract himself, watching how the little girl rocked in a rhythm, counting in her head, watching, memorizing, breathing. That night, they brought in food, soggy sandwiches, a bottle of water for each of us. I took mine with both hands, letting them shake, lifting the bottle to my mouth with exaggerated clumsiness, spilling water down my front. The shorter man laughed. "See? Told you. Easy." They closed the door again, leaving us in darkness except for the dim glow of the camera's red light. When I was sure they were gone, I turned to the older boy. "Hey," I whispered, dropping the act. He looked at me, startled. "I thought you were—" "Shh, I'm not," I said. "I heard them in the diner. I let them take me." His eyes widened. "Are you crazy? I'm going to get us out." He shook his head. "You can't. They've got guns. They take the others away and they don't come back." My stomach twisted, but I didn't let it show. "Do you know how many they took? Where'd they take them?" He looked down, picking at the thread again. 6, I think. They take them at night. They say it's for new families." I clenched my fists. Adoption, I thought, or worse. "We're going to get out," I whispered again. "But you can't tell them I'm not, like that." He looked up, and for the first time I saw something in his eyes. Hope. That night, I lay on the dirty mattress, the smell of mildew in my nose, staring at the ceiling. Every creak of the building made me flinch. Every time the door handle rattled, I shut my eyes and let my mouth fall open. But inside, I was awake. I was planning. Because if I was going to save them, I had to keep pretending to be stupid just a little while longer. The next morning, the door opened with a metallic screech that jolted everyone awake. I snapped into my act instantly, letting my eyes go unfocused, wiping drool onto my sleeve, blinking slowly as the taller man stepped in with a plastic crate of food. "Breakfast, kiddos." He dropped it on the floor. Dry cereal in sandwich bags, juice boxes. The little blonde girl scrambled forward, grabbing a bag with shaking hands. The older boy hung back, glancing at me. I gave him the slightest nod, then let my head drop, rocking softly, mouthing nonsense sounds. The man watched me for a moment, eyes narrowing, testing. I let my tongue poke out, eyes crossing for a second, swaying in place. "Yeah," he muttered, satisfied, before stepping out and slamming the door. When it was safe, I snapped back, tearing into the cereal, not because I was hungry, but because I needed the energy. "They're watching us," the older boy whispered, nodding toward the corner camera. "I know," I whispered back, I could feel it, the low hum of the camera motor shifting as it tracked movement, the red light blinking in the darkness. I noticed it moved most when the little ones cried or when the older boy tried to comfort them. They liked watching weakness. That night, I pretended to sleep, slowing my breathing while I listened. I heard them arguing outside the door. We need to clear out. The new buyer wants the girl tomorrow. Which one? The blonde one. She's too small. He said he wanted the quiet one. Then take the rabbit girl. She's not quiet. She screams all the time. The shorter man swore under his breath. We're not getting paid enough for this. My fists clenched under the thin blanket. They were selling them, like objects. When the door opened, the taller man stepped in, grabbing the girl with the stuffed rabbit. She screamed, kicking, tears streaking down her dirty cheeks, clutching the rabbit to her chest. No, 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 please. The man slapped her, hard, and she went quiet, sobbing as he dragged her out. The door slammed. I forced myself to keep the act, rocking, humming softly, drooling, blinking slow. Inside, I was screaming, my throat burning with helpless rage. She didn't come back the next morning. That day, I made my move. While pretending to play with a piece of string near the camera's blind spot, I found a tiny shard of metal from the rusting wall panel. I palmed it carefully, hiding it under the mattress. At night, I used it to scratch into the back of a cereal bag with trembling hands. They take us. Please help. White van. Warehouse near train tracks. Please. I handed it to the older boy when we swapped trash for the morning collection, forcing him to keep his face blank as he tucked it into the trash bag, burying it under empty juice boxes. We didn't know if it would work, but it was the only chance we had. That evening, the shorter man came in, glancing at each of us. We're moving tomorrow. Pack them up. His eyes settled on me, studying me. Him too? The taller man shrugged. Why not? Easy money. He stepped forward, crouching in front of me. Hey, buddy. I let my head drop, drool sliding down my chin. You're going on a trip tomorrow, okay? I blinked slowly, letting out a soft whimper, clutching the string in my hand, rocking. Yeah, you're a good boy, aren't you? I let my lip wobble, eyes welling, a low moan in my throat. He smiled. See? Easy. He stood up, turning away. When the door shut, the older boy looked at me, eyes wide. They're taking you tomorrow. I nodded, breathing heavily, heart pounding. Good, I whispered. I need to see where they take us. You're insane, he whispered back. Maybe, I said, but it's the only way we get out. That night, I barely slept, every creak in the old building making my body jolt, my mind rehearsing. Stay limp, stay stupid, count the steps, watch everything. Find a way to get out. Because if they were taking me tomorrow, it was going to be the start of the end for them. They came for me before dawn. The warehouse was cold, dew dripping from the broken windows, the air heavy with the smell of mildew and sweat. I was awake when the door opened, but I let my eyes stay half-lidded, let my body flop when the taller man yanked me up by the arm. Come on, drooly, he muttered. I let my head roll forward, drool sliding down my chin, eyes blinking slowly. Inside, my mind was razor sharp. They led me down the hallway, past the flickering bulb, the dirty concrete echoing under their boots. I counted the steps. 1, 2, 3. They turned left, past the room where they kept supplies. I saw the metal shelves, the boxes of diapers, cheap snacks, and bottles of water. 14, 15, 16. We reached the back door. The morning light was gray, a mist hanging over the cracked parking lot. The white van was there, engine idling, exhaust puffing into the cold. They opened the sliding door and I let them push me in, falling to my knees, letting out a soft grunt, blinking dumbly. There were 3 other kids in the van already. The blonde girl, her eyes red from crying, clutching a dirty stuffed animal someone else must have given her after the rabbit girl was taken. A small boy, maybe 6, with a shaved head, sitting silently with wide, empty eyes. And the older boy, the one who had helped me hide the message in the trash, his face pale, lips trembling. I caught his eyes for a fraction of a second. Stay calm, I thought, hoping he understood. They shut the door, and darkness fell, lit only by a crack of light near the roof. I could hear them outside arguing. We're late. Shut up and get the papers. You sure the buyer's solid? It's cash. That's all that matters. Buyer. The word made me feel like vomiting, but I swallowed it, forcing my face slack. The van jolted as they climbed in, the engine rumbling as we pulled out of the lot. I started counting turns again. Left, right, straight for a long while, over train tracks. I pressed my face against the cold metal floor, peeking under the gap of the back door, catching flashes of the outside, rusting fences, power lines, a gas station with a broken sign. Every detail burned into my brain. We drove for what felt like forever. At one point, the van stopped, and the taller man opened the back to check on us. I let out a soft whimper, drooling, blinking slowly, letting my hands flap once before dropping limp. Good boy, he chuckled, slamming the door again. Eventually, the van turned down a long gravel road, potholes rattling my bones, pulling up to what looked like an old farmhouse. The paint peeling, windows boarded. A barn stood in the back, the door half open. They parked. The doors opened, and the morning light flooded in, blinding. They grabbed us one by one. When it was my turn, I let my body flop, forcing a confused whine as the taller man lifted me over his shoulder, carrying me into the barn. Inside, it was dark. the air thick with the smell of hay, old wood, and something metallic. There was a single light bulb hanging from a cord, swaying as we entered. They dropped us near a wooden pen, like we were livestock. "Buyers coming in an hour," the shorter man said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Make sure they don't wander." "They won't," the taller one replied, glancing at me. I let my tongue poke out, blinking. They left us there, locking the barn door with a heavy clunk. As soon as they were gone, the older boy crawled toward me. "What do we do?" he whispered, his voice cracking. I scanned the barn, my mind racing. There was a small window near the top of the wall, but too high. Tools hanging on a pegboard on the far side. A stack of crates under the window. "We're getting out," I whispered. "Now, they'll kill us. Only if we stay." I dropped the act completely for the first time in days. I stood, moving fast but quiet, helping the little blonde girl to her feet. "Come on," I whispered. "We're going to play a game, okay? We're going to be super quiet ninjas." She nodded, tears streaking down her dirty face. I looked at the older boy. "Help me with the crates." Together, we dragged them under the window, the wood scraping against the dirt floor. I climbed first, peeking through the dirty glass. Outside, I saw a gravel driveway, the van, and the tree line about 50 yards away. No one was outside. Yet. I used a rusted tool from the wall, jamming it under the window, prying it until it cracked open, shards of glass falling into the dirt with soft tinks. I boosted the little girl up, shoving her through the window, whispering, "Run to the trees and hide." She nodded, slipping through like a shadow. Next was the small boy, shaking, but he went. Then the older boy climbed, looking back at me, eyes wide. "Come on!" I paused, grabbing a heavy wrench from the tool rack. If they caught us, I wouldn't go back without a fight. I climbed through the window, dropping into the weeds outside. The air was cold, sharp in my lungs. The others were waiting by the tree line, shaking, terrified. I turned to them. "Run, don't stop, find someone, anyone, get help." We ran. The gravel tore at my feet, the cold air burning my throat. But I ran faster than I ever had in my life. Behind us, the barn door slammed open. "Hey, stop!" A gunshot cracked through the morning air, and the little girl screamed, but we didn't stop. We tore into the trees, branches scratching our arms and faces, the ground muddy, our breaths ragged. Another gunshot. Keep going, keep going. We broke through the trees, stumbling into a back road where a delivery truck was coming around the corner. I ran into the road, waving my arms, screaming, "Help, please!" The truck screeched to a stop, the driver's eyes wide in shock. Behind us, the taller man burst from the tree line, gun in hand. Another shot. The driver ducked, screaming, but I grabbed the door handle, yanking it open. "Call the police, please!" The man jumped back into his truck, slamming the horn, reversing fast, nearly hitting the kidnapper who dove out of the way. We scrambled around the side, pulling the little ones into the grass, hiding as the truck sped down the road. I held the little girl as she sobbed into my shoulder, the older boy gripping my hand, both of us shaking. Sirens. In the distance, growing louder, blue and red flashing through the trees. I fell to my knees in the grass, gasping, my body finally shaking with everything I had held back, because it was over. We had made it. We were free. The first thing I saw were the lights, red and blue washing over the trees, bouncing off the wet road. The sirens were loud, but I'd never heard anything so comforting in my life. I held the little blonde girl tighter as she sobbed, her small hands clutching at my shirt. The older boy was still gripping my wrist, his knuckles white, both of us trembling. A police cruiser skidded to a stop, doors flying open, officers with guns drawn shouting, "Hands up! Hands up!" I raised one hand, the other still around the little girl, screaming, "Help us! They have a gun!" Two officers ran forward, lowering their weapons when they saw us, calling over their shoulders for paramedics. The older boy collapsed onto the grass, crying, clutching at the dirt. The little girl was sobbing so hard she could barely breathe, and one of the officers scooped her up, wrapping a blanket around her, carrying her toward the cruiser. They asked me questions, but I couldn't stop shaking. "Are there more kids? Who took you? Where were you being held?" I tried to talk, but the words got stuck in my throat. I pointed back toward the trees, gasping for air. An officer knelt in front of me, gripping my shoulders, looking me dead in the eyes. "You're safe now, son. You're safe." Paramedics arrived, checking us for injuries. They wrapped me in a blanket, the fabric scratchy but warm, the smell of antiseptic sharp in my nose. I saw the older boy sitting in the back of an ambulance, wrapped up, rocking slightly, but his eyes were on me. We shared a look. We had made it. Later, at the station, they let me call my parents. I couldn't even get the words out when Dad answered. I just started crying, clutching the phone to my ear, my whole body shaking. "Tommy? Tommy, is that you? Oh my God! Oh my God, son!" I heard Mom's voice in the background, sobbing. They told me they were coming, that they were already on the way. The police asked me everything. And for the first time since I stepped out of that bathroom, I dropped every part of the act. I told them everything, what I overheard in the diner, every turn, every landmark, the way the kidnappers moved, what they looked like, what they said, where the warehouse was, the layout, the camera, the number of kids. They looked at me with disbelief at first, then with something else. Respect, maybe, or horror. "You're saying you let them take you?" one detective asked softly. I nodded. I had to. Otherwise, they would have taken someone else. I had to know where they were taking us. The detective's eyes were glassy when he wrote down the last notes. Later that night, they told me they raided the farmhouse and the warehouse. They found the hidden rooms, the supplies, the cameras. They found other kids. 2 more. terrified but alive. They arrested the men, catching one trying to run with a bag of cash into the woods. The police told me it was because of what I remembered, because of what I told them. When my parents arrived at the station, Mom collapsed into my arms, sobbing so hard she couldn't stand. Dad pulled us both into a hug, his arms shaking. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm sorry. Don't you ever apologize?" Dad choked out, kissing the top of my head. "Don't you ever." We went home, but I wasn't the same. At night, I heard the barn door slamming in my dreams. I smelled the mildew and sweat, felt the gravel cutting into my feet, saw the red light blinking in the dark. It took a long time before I could walk into a diner without flinching at the sound of the doorbell. A long time before I could look at a white van without feeling my stomach twist. But the little girl is home with her parents now. I saw it on the news. The older boy found his family again. We've exchanged a few messages, short, quiet ones, checking if we're both okay. The men who took us are in prison, and they won't hurt anyone else again. I still think about what would have happened if I hadn't heard them in that bathroom. If I hadn't decided, in that terrifying moment, that the only way to fight back was to pretend I couldn't. Sometimes people say I was brave, but the truth is I was scared every second. I wasn't a hero. I was just a kid who realized in the worst moment of my life that pretending to be stupid was the only way to survive, and I'd do it again. Because sometimes that's what it takes to save yourself, and the people who can't save themselves.